Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I interview founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, and amazing people all around the world of crypto and blockchain. And today I have another amazing guest. He is the founder of a recently named change to the Bullionite Asset Group. His name is Mukarram Mawjood. Mukarram, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jamil. Really appreciate having you here. Having me here. I really appreciate that.
Awesome to have you here. Hopefully, I pronounced your name perfectly. Well, you'll correct me if I didn't. Um, but I'll ask you first. We'll kick things off with what is your background, and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
Yeah, because I started out 20 years ago, in the commodities industry, right? I've been a commodities trader. We've done futures trading. I've worked at brokerage houses. And then as that 2008, 2009 crash started happening in the country, right? Where I realized that a lot of clients were looking for education, right? They wanted to understand what's going on. So at that time, that's when we kind of started implementing, even, at a significant cost to us, this philosophy that you have to learn, then invest, and then succeed, right? So it was all an education based. Let's educate clients. And I got a lot of flack for that from senior other traders when we go to dinner and stuff like that. Like, why are you teaching this? Or why is this happening, right? But we believe that an educated client who understands what they're doing or is knowledgeable of what's happening is a more powerful client, right? So that's why that whole philosophy came in. Learn, invest, and then succeed. Because if we work together as a group. And then that's where Blackstone Commodity Group. So that's the firm, right? The firm, the name change has happened to Bullionite Asset Group. But Blackstone Commodity Group existed from 2009 all the way up to this year. And then we changed the name because of our evolution into different assets. But alternative assets is what we got into significantly in 2009 all the way because we believed in the financial landscape in terms of what's going to happen with the US dollar. So we were able to catch that big bull run in gold that happened when it went from $680 to 1,900 between '08 and 2011. And the same thing with silver. We've traded crude oil, So alternative assets is what we do, and that's because we believe in not just the protection of wealth, but we also believe in the increase of net worth, right? And alternative assets is one of the best ways that can do that. And then obviously crypto came into the landscape. Then we figured out a way on how to help clients with cryptocurrency. We do this a lot with IRAs, right? So self-directed IRAs, gold, physical silver, cryptocurrency, real estate. And that's because of our own personal philosophy. We believe in building net worth, right? So I definitely believe we have the experience and the knowledge to do what we're doing.
Very cool. So you had a recent name change, right? You changed to Bullionite Asset Group. So I want to find out what the reason that is, and then your vision and your mission and your purpose um, for your company.
Yeah, so Bullionite was my company that I've had since 2014. That's kind of the education arm of my services, right? So Blackstone Commodity Group used to do all the alternative asset investing, right? And then Bullionite was all the education, like the trader education, the mindset education, and all that. But then as time went by, and then you can see how well everything was being received, right? We believed that one, we wanted to get a uniformity to this. So that's why Bullionite Asset Group is now, Blackstone Commodity Group is now Bullionite Asset Group. And we have the same relationships, the custodial relationships, we can do everything that we've done before, right? Self-directed IRAs, precious metals, cryptocurrency. And then Bullionite will become the tagline, which is success is relentless. That was my tagline from long, long time ago. And that's where we will do all of the education from. The trader education, the investor education, the mindset training. Because I always believe you can't just be a trader or a investor without really becoming self-aware and improving your mindset, because that's what you need. So for me, all of investing is 75% your mindset, 25% skill, whether it's trading or investing, right? So we focus a lot on that. Even when I work with clients one-on-one, even when they have, IRAs with me and they are not even doing trading education, we help with their mindset. And that become especially nowadays, you can see how crazy the markets are and how volatile they are, right? When you have that right mindset and you're self-aware, you're not affected by them as much.
Got it. So I want to get into the mindset. You said it's important that people shift their mindset, right? So I'm thinking of two instances. One is, I learned something on, and I don't do the sell part really well, but the original thought is, okay, you have to create something, then you pitch it, then you sell it. If you look at the coaches, really good ones, like, no, 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 no. You got to pitch first, then sell, then you create what you pitched. So, it's this shift, like you said, a shift in mindset. So how to get people to shift their mindset from being just conservative to taking on things like a self-directed Bitcoin IRA? How do you get them to make that mindset shift?
Okay, yeah, great question. I think it all comes down to, because I like to look at different things in layers, right? So if you peel the layers, the first thing is there's no one set of rules, right? So you have to really understand your client and figure out what their goals are, what their needs are, because you're a team working together to accomplish an end result that is going to increase their net worth and get them to the goals that they want, right? So for that, first, you got to understand some of their past. Because a lot of people, like when I talk to, they'll be like, hey, Mukarram, I've always lost money. I never make money in the markets. I have the worst timing. And first of all, words are powerful, right? Like Bruce Lee said, they're like spells, right? So you got to be very careful. That's why they call it spelling. That's what he said that, right? Um, so we've changed the narrative, both internally and also externally for the individual, because we've gone through challenges. And that's why I always believe you can't just be a coach, you have to be a player coach, right? You have to be playing. So today we still are in the markets. I still trade my own money, right? We're still going through the ups and downs and the craziness that happens with the tariffs and the pause and the tariffs, right? So that's what allows us to be together with a client and then figure out, okay, first of all, what are your personality traits that hold you back? Now, I know that's a little controversial, right, when I say that, because people saying, are you asking me to change? Yes, you have to change. If you want big things in life, right, and you want to accomplish massive wealth generation, there might be some habits that you have or personality traits that are preventing you from that. Like, for example, certain people I've noticed, I've coached many individuals in trading, and with myself, like as a trader, anger, revenge trading, frustration, right? Annoyance. These are things you got to work on. That's what I mean by mindset. And some people don't think that's important, but when you work on those, then a noise in the market doesn't affect you, right? Only something major you will understand it. Then the other thing is really helping people understand that you have to be between the reaction and the stimulus. Like you have to observe it as a trader, as an investor, right? And this comes from my meditation background. Like I had to, like life forced me to understand mindfulness meditation. When I had my second son and life like was crazy around in the house, right? I was like, okay, if I'm going to continue in my path and be great in my personal life, I need something better than what I've been doing. Like, I need to understand myself. So, mindfulness meditation has allowed me to get to a point where I can observe something and then make a well thought out decision rather than an emotional reaction. Now, I'm not one of those people that says, hey, don't have emotions. No, you're an emotional human being. You just have to understand your emotions, be self aware in it. And then you also have to be able to lean into it, right? So these are things that are massive, massive, Jamil. Like when we help clients, because sometimes they really go back and say, hey, for 30 years, I haven't understood this about me. And then suddenly they have this massive, like, they become a 16-foot person, right, in their mind. And then they begin to accomplish their things step by step. And after that, the execution, quickly, so I don't get too long-winded on this. One of the biggest reasons that people either hold on to a trade or don't get out of a losing trade is because they don't have the confidence that they can find the next winner. Okay. They don't have the confidence that they have a set of rules that will allow them to identify and get the next opportunity, right? So they either hold on to something. Like right now, I have gold clients who got into gold at $1,600 and they still don't want to get out. Gold's gone up more than $1,000 in 7 months, right? That's not what gold does. So you have to be getting out of gold right now. It's not the time to buy gold, right? That's what I've been saying. I know a lot of people say, hey, buy gold, because it's easy to say that, but I'm not saying that. Silver is a better option, right? Because there's a big, massive price arbitrage there. But this is what I mean by it. People just don't know, like, okay, well, I have this big profit, but they don't know how to get to another one because they're not confident or they don't have a set of rules that allows them to find the next opportunity. And we help them with that.
Right. So I do want to get into trading. I think I want to start by asking you about this would be a good segue into that. Your Young Trader of the Year competition, right? So what's that all about, and how do you teach young investors the fundamentals?
Yeah. So that comes from years of having this burning desire to help the youth attain a skill that is limitless. Okay. And I'm just going to explain that a little bit. For me, trading is not just trying to make money. Trading is a way to create money. Like if you go to Bullion Night, you'll see that's my philosophy, right? Creating money. Creating money requires a completely different set of rules and mindset. It's not like earning money. 99% of people, they have this earning money mindset, even if they make $1 million a year, which is a lot of money for some people, right? But if you're trapped in that earning money mindset, then you do not become limitless. You don't release like that potential that you have in you, right? Now, as I've had kids, and my oldest is 13, right? And then I have a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old. And then I have my wife has her eldest who's 17. I've seen the need, especially in the last 10 years, Jamil, you would have seen how social media and YouTube have allowed people, yeah, to do great, but at the same time, the youth are losing their decision-making skills, right? They're losing the appetite for education. So I've recently coined something. There's something different. There's a difference between studying and learning. Okay. If you don't like studying, you can't tell me you don't like to learn because you're just going to completely fail in life, right? So that's important. So that's where we came up with. I said, hey, especially with some of my junior traders and some associates, we sat down and said, how can we help the youth? And then we came up with an age group because youth can be very broad, right? So we said 16 years old, from 16 to 22 is very, very formative because you're kind of going into junior high, right? And then you're a junior in college at 22, kind of, right? So somewhere there is where we believe all of that knowledge has to be given to them, but in a step-by-step fashion because they're growing up significantly between 16 to 22. And that's why we came up with the Young Trader of the Year competition, where what we do is we have a kind of a strict selection process. You go to our website, you see a Young Trader section, you click on it. There's some very specific questions, right, that are tailored to understand your mind. After that, we'll choose 10 students and then they'll be part of a 12-session program with me. It's all free, right? Where we teach them the exact things that helped us learn how to trade, but actionable steps. How do you put a stop loss? How do you do this? Why do you trade, right? What is creating money versus earning money? What is limitless? Once you do that, at the end of the 10 sessions, after that, we choose the top three in the class, right? Sometimes it could be two teams, sometimes it's top three individuals. And then we give them $10,000, right? So 5,000 for the first, 3,000 and then 2,000, right? Then they have a month or 2 months to trade that money. Whoever gets the largest percentage gain of that money gets to keep all of it. And we want to continue to do this because I've seen like individuals light up right? And they just completely change because they go, hey, I now can create my own destiny. And once you give that, you don't really need to keep motivating them, right? So that's what the Young Trader of the Year program is.
I like it. I like that concept of the person who wins that has the greatest percentage keeps that's competition. It's good. Um, so there's traders, and in crypto they call the traders degens. But there's traders and then there's investors. And I used to trade back in 2017 to 19, and since then I've been an investor. And but that required like a mind shift change because traders' skills are different than investors' skills. So you have to know when to hold them and when to fold them, or when to hold and when to not hold, right? How do you know when to hold and not hold? How do you know some of those things that will transition someone from being a trader to being an investor? What's that transition like? How do you do it?
Okay, so this is important for everyone to understand, right? Because whenever people hear the word trader, they always think this quick day trading person, okay? This in and out, uh, I let me make $200 today and be done, or lunch money. That's not the kind of traders we are, just so that everyone understands this, right? We come from a background of what we are position traders or swing traders, okay? And what that means is that we build a position during a particular time period in a market that is backed by both technical analysis and fundamental analysis, right? And a fusion of of both. And then we build a massive position, like over time, we'll build it. And then after it takes a big run based on our proprietary math and everything else that we can teach, then we get out of it, right? Now that could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, sometimes it could be a year. Usually it doesn't take longer than a year, right? Now that's what a position trader is. Now, there's nothing wrong in being a day trader. There's nothing wrong in being a short-term trader. I mean, we're short-term too, depending. We're not 5-year holders, right? But people really need to understand what is day trading. Day trading does not mean that you have to trade every day. Okay. Day trading simply means you get in the morning and then get out before the close of the market. That's it. Now, we don't do that all the time, but once in a while, if a market requires that, a market condition requires that, we'll do it. But our majority of our trading is swing trading and position trading. Okay. Now, you asked another question. What about when someone goes from trader to investor? Now, this is very important. Okay. If you are trading, you have to have your own goals for your trading. This is why when some people come to me and they go, hey, Mukarram, I really want to learn how to trade like you, or like what you guys have done over the years, but I really don't want to work that much. You know, I don't want to follow rules because that's why people are trying to get away from work, right? They don't want to follow rules. They don't want to be disciplined. But what I tell them is, hey, this is even more rules than your work, right? This is even more work than your work, but it doesn't feel like it because you're very passionate about what you're doing. And also because the rewards are that much greater than you going to work from 9 to 5, right? But when you learn it correctly, you will have rules. Like sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning, you know, and then I have to follow certain markets. Sometimes I don't go to bed till 1:30 at Pacific Standard Time and then wake up at 4 a.m. in morning Pacific Standard Time, simply because of the different markets we trade, the different time zones, right? But it doesn't feel like work for us. It just feels like, hey, this is our process. And if we follow this process and this discipline, then we can have some great winners. We'll also have some losers, right? Now, here's the thing, Jamil. Don't ever go from a trade to an investment. That's very, very important, okay? Because what that means is you have not accepted that you're wrong on that trade. What you've done is you've gotten into a trade that has a certain time period, right? Trading has a short-term time period. It could be a day, it could be 15 minutes, it could be a week, it could be 3 months. It's usually never over like a few months, right? So, but if after you got into that trade and you know it's going wrong, and it's not going, the price action is not supporting your thesis, if you continue to hold it and then say, you know what, if I keep it for the next 5 years, I'm just going to invest in it, that's when you're wrong. because you can't make a trade become an investment. Okay. You have to trade certain markets and you can invest in certain markets. You have to have two complete distinct categories, but don't let a trade become an investment because what you're saying is you haven't taken the loss. And you're not just giving it, now you're giving excuses and saying, you know what, if I hold it for 3, 5 years, it'll come back and then I haven't lost. That's an ego move, right? And traders, great traders don't have an ego. So you have to understand that.
Got it. So I think I have one crypto holding that I made a trade. I made a trade into an investment. I got to reconsider that. You know,
Yeah, I mean, that's hopefully this helps.
it does. Thank you. Um, so I want to shift gears a little bit to the market, right? Not just the market, but the regulatory landscape, right? So, um, you hear a lot about the lay of the land for crypto with ETFs, with Bitcoin ETFs, Litecoin ETFs, Solana, all these ETFs, but no one really talks anymore about the CFTC, which is the Commodities and Exchange Commission, right? You don't hear the news about their view on blockchain and crypto anymore. So I just want to find out what the lay of the land is for commodities and crypto. And what it seems like it's taking a backseat, but I want to get your lay of the land where things are at.
I mean, when you look at the major commodities, right? Not commodities, sorry. When you look at the major cryptos, like let's say Bitcoin, right? It has been classified very clearly that you can understand that it is a commodity, right? Now, the way you understand the CFTC and the SEC is just simply knowing that the CFTC regulates commodity futures contracts, right? So if a cryptocurrency has a futures contract, that means it's already been approved by the CFTC. Okay. So all you have to do is just go look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, whichever ones that have futures contracts, then the CFTC is fine with it, right? It's going on to that next leap of an ETF. CFTC does not regulate ETFs. They don't do anything with that. Becoming an ETF and then trading, like for example, Bitcoin had a futures contract, I think in 2017. I remember, because that's when Bitcoin went from $6,000 to almost $19,000 inside of that year, based on the anticipation of a futures contract getting approved. And then Ethereum got a futures contract as well. And then usually, we can see that when something is factored into the market, we saw then Bitcoin drop from 19,000 back to like around 8,000 or 6,000, and then have its normal curve again, right? Now, here's a beautiful thing that's happening now. The whole Solana ETF thing. Oh, but before I go into that, so that people can understand this in layers, it took a significant number of years for us to get a Bitcoin ETF and an Ethereum ETF. It did not happen 2 years after a futures contract in Bitcoin or 1 year after a futures contract, right? It only happened last year, just a couple months before the halving for Bitcoin, right? So it took from 2017 to 2024 for an ETF to be approved. That's because the SEC has its own path and own way of kind of regulating. And then now the landscape has changed significantly, right? They're becoming more pro crypto, easier regulation, probably, right? And I think that's good. It's actually good for the crypto community. It's great for cryptocurrency. And now you will see more ETFs. That's why you have I think 11 ETF applications for XRP and Solana and things like that. But here's what's interesting. Solana just got a futures contract approved a couple of months ago. That tells us that the ETF is coming. The probability is very high for the ETF, right? And we can't tell you whether it's 1 month from now or 2 months from now, but we know the probability has increased because usually the precursor for any ETF to be approved is to have a futures contract. If you have a futures contract, it makes the chances that much higher. So that's how I look at it. I look at it in terms of a price action analysis and a probability scenario, right? Because that will allow me to build my positions. So for example, when Solana dropped from a 295 high to about 110 or so, or $100 when this whole tariff thing and everything happened, right? That was a great time to build positions in Solana, even though people got really worried and people started talking about bearish markets. They're not, because here's how you look at this. If you look at before the election last year, you saw it was a very difficult, challenging market, right? Because there was a lot of unknowns coming up. But after the elections, yeah, people were like, okay, this is now we have a pro-crypto president, we have great new legislation coming out, things like that, right? Okay. But then crypto did run up, but then suddenly with the tariffs and everything coming out, crypto started collapsing, right? But here's what I like to teach. This is part of the mindset training, right? When an asset class begins to act in a way that it's not supposed to act, your first thing that you should do is to find out if the fundamentals happening are directly related to that asset class or not. For example, when Bitcoin dropped from 109,000 maybe to 79,000 or so, Ethereum dropped from almost 3,000 to 2,000, right? Solana dropped from 295 to 100. All we had happening at that time was more and more crypto friendly things going on, right? The crypto reserve being announced, right? The new, the crypto forums and so there was nothing negative that was going on in that landscape. It was just that it was caught up in a, margin related liquidation from the stock market and all that. So this is why that's not a bear market. This is where you have to have that zen. You have to be in middle of your response and the stimuli, right? And you have to be like, okay, should I build a big position now in crypto? But people started chasing gold. But gold had gone from 1,800 to 2,900 by that time, and then went up another $200-300, right? That's where the retail public gets it really wrong because they see gold going up now. The last $300 to $400 is just like running out of breath. That's what it is, right? Whereas Bitcoin's dropped, Solana's dropped almost like what, 60-70%. Buy that. That's an oversold asset, right? Rather than buying gold.
Makes a lot of sense. Me. So, I want to find out. There's I want to stick with crypto. I want to get into metals because I don't want to miss that. But I want to stay with this. We're talking about legs up, legs down, right? Crypto right now to me seems to be in a holding pattern, right? What do you think would be the factors that facilitate that next upward move, when that'll happen, and what we need to look at to assess the sustainability and the improvement of pricing, in the market, because we're not quite back to where maybe a lot of people think we should be at.
Okay, that's interesting because for me, I don't think of crypto as being in a holding pattern. Okay. And this is interesting, right? Because we have two, and this is why people love shows like yours, right? Because they can begin to get extreme value from this conversation because it'll allow them to have an actionable sequence. That's what all of trading and investing is. You can do as much research as possible, right? But if you don't have an actionable way of executing, that's a problem, right? And that's why a lot of our training comes in, having actionable steps into the research you've done, right? But the actionable steps also have to be very simple. The research can be complicated, but the execution has to be simple, okay? So here's why I say that crypto is not in a holding period pattern, because we just created a new record high for Bitcoin just a few days ago, right? Before this Europe 50% tariff announcement came out of the blue. We were at 111,000 or so. So for me, what that is, and before that, because we're so involved in this trading and markets and building positions, we've been watching price, right? So we saw how Bitcoin was forming a base. It was finding it very difficult to go over 104,000, 105,000, right? Every time it'll go there, it'll get hit, come to 98,000 or 99,000. It probably did it like 4 or 5 times, right? Maybe even more. I don't know. Someone can correct me. But after that, when it broke through that, then it went to 109, 110, 111, right? And now it's basing again. So here's how you have to look at markets. If markets are like these big monsters, right, that they need to feed, after they feed, they need to go back into the cave and rest a bit and then come out, right? Asset classes are like that. So Bitcoin is this massive monster that started chomping down and eating, from 104,000 to 111 now, and now it's just resting a bit. And I believe, like mathematically primed, it's going higher. So now what you do is you got to figure out two things. Do you want to be on that train, or do you want to figure out how to play something that can benefit from it? Like for example, when gold goes up, silver tends to go higher with time, right? So with Bitcoin, I prefer playing the alts as they go higher. Solana has come down significantly. So you have a great play there. And Solana has a lot of like advantages to it, right? AVAX. Quant, just in the last 2 days, has gone up $24 almost, right? In 2 days, from maybe $90 to $120 or so, or 119 today in the morning. These are all, this is what I call success leaves clues, like Tony Robbins says, right? Success leaves clues. The market leaves you clues. It's telling you, I want to go up. But here's the problem. A lot of people, they want, because of the ego, right? They want to be either right, or they don't want to be wrong, or they don't want to admit that. But it's not about that. It's about listening to the market, because the market will always be right. Remember that. It's not whether you're right or I'm wrong, or you're wrong and I'm right. It's about the market. So if you listen to the market very carefully right now, it's saying, if you just leave me alone a bit, I want to go up significantly, right? That's all it is. If the noise goes away, we could be at 120,000 Bitcoin if not for that, announcement last week, right? It's just how it is. Now people sometimes come to me and say, "Hey, why does this have to happen?" That's just how markets are. You have to be able to lean into it and go through these uncertainties and still have a solid plan so you don't miss out, right? And that's why I believe the new leg up has started, by the way, right? Certain things have to catch up. Now, I know there's been a delay in the alt season, right? Usually, if you go back to all the other halvings, this one's been a delay. The other thing is, if you look at the other halving years, you'll see that the peak price is usually during October, November, December of the subsequent year from halving. So we still have quite a bit of time, okay? And that's why we're not worried about this at all. And we look at any correction as a godsend, right? To build big positions and hold on. Now, what's going to happen is you need to be able to, be able to navigate your mind when we come into that October, November, December time. Now, here's why I'm saying this, Jamil, and this is really cool because on your podcast, the people will really, this might be one of the first times people are hearing this, right? Because we've had a delayed alt season for the first time in the last 4 halving years, we might actually go into the following year, 2026, because every other halving cycle has ended at a high on October, November, December of the subsequent year. But this time around, we may go into the next year. So understanding that and navigating that and not missing out a big run, right? Because some markets tend to go parabolic, and then $100 run in Solana looks like nothing, you know. And that's where I think when we do other shows together, maybe we'll speak down the road where we can analyze that, right?
That's that to me. I understand what you're saying. That makes sense from a logical perspective. It makes sense, and like part of me is like nervous that because the market can stay irrational longer than I can stay solvent, right? So, how do you got to deal with that too? So we'll see. Um, but there's been a lot of talk, recently about RWAs, about tokenizing, money market funds, or tokenizing stocks, or tokenizing bonds. You're in the mining business too, so I haven't heard as much talk about tokenizing oil, gas, diamonds, stuff like that, natural resources. So where are we at as far as crypto for mining, like real mining, not just Bitcoin mining, but actual, metal mining? What are the challenges still exist, and where can we be?
We're not directly in the mining business, okay? So what we do is we help clients who come to us. There are these are the different, like, clients that come to us. One is a retirement group, right? Now you can have a retirement account even if you're 40 years old. So if you have an IRA or a previous 401k or a current 401k that you're older than 59 and a half and you can do a in-service rollover, then you come to us. And these are the individuals who are worried about their net worth. They're worried about it being wiped out 20, 30%. If you get a big crash in the stock market, we go into a recession, a dollar crash, especially since we have a 20-year double top on the dollar. Now, for those individuals, when we sit down, we figure out, okay, you can actually transfer your existing IRA. Like you can sell out, go liquidate, and then transfer it into a self-directed IRA. And then you can buy physical precious metals or physical cryptocurrency, right? Like the actual digital asset instead of any mining companies. And then you can hold that through a market cycle and then make significant returns, based on the market performance, right? So it's a net worth appreciation. So not only are you protecting your money from a big crash, you're hedging yourself and also could get a significant run up in the value of the accounts, right? If you can time it around the correct, you don't have to be exact on it. As long as you can be in that range, you're great. So that's where we help a lot of clients when they want to protect a retirement account, an IRA or a 401k that they have, and you can do this transfer without taxes, without penalties, because you're going from one retirement account to another, right? Um, the other way is clients come to us and say, hey, I have liquidity. I have this much money sitting in a stock account, or that I'm worried that it'll come down, or I have money sitting in a savings account and I want to make sure that, I can protect it with gold, physical silver. We can get that delivered to you, right? You can use your cryptocurrency separately, all that. So that's how we help clients. We're not directly involved in the mining, but we do follow like the industry. For example, the tokenization of assets, right? Already we've had some, gold funds that have been tokenized, right? So going back to your question, it's not just the tokenization that I think that you're seeing the shift in. You're also seeing shifts in ESG requirement companies, right? Because when you go to blockchain, you can actually trace whether something's coming from a conflict area or not, or is it a conflict source diamond? Like De Beers is actually doing that, you know when it comes to the diamonds, they're using blockchain to kind of figure out if this is conflict sourced or not. Now it's not, fully fledged right yet, but it is coming up, right? They are doing that. The other thing I can see is with smart contracts and, a lot of transactional, like when it comes to not just commodity mining, to look at operational efficiency, right? Like a lot of these miners, they can use blockchain for operational efficiency. But you have to understand something. Commodities, especially gold, silver, crude oil, are legacy operations, right? They take a while to make or adapt to new technology, new changes. And that's why you're seeing that slowdown. Whereas already you're seeing stock build and you're having stocks being listed on blockchain and the new companies that are coming up with that, right? Because that's an easier industry. They don't look at it. It's not like that's an industry that's more adept at change. Whereas with physical extracting commodities, mining operations, they're very legacy operations. So they may take a little longer, but it is happening, right? And even with crude oil, we are seeing, here's another thing. Certain countries that have experienced the ire of sanctions, right? Like Russia, certain other countries, Iran, they will look at how do we monetize our asset through blockchain and then avoid like going through this sanction situation, right? I'm not saying that they'll avoid it completely, but it's a way that they can start looking into, right? Because gold, by the way, one of the reasons gold goes up is a sanction-proof asset, you know, and that's why gold's gone up so much in the last year and a half or so. And then finally, just to say, there's going to be challenges because of the regulatory environment. You have different regulatory bodies. Like I said, the legacy situation with certain industries, they'll take some adaptability. And also, I believe why I support tokenization and anything that's going on blockchain, that's the future, right? We can't run away from it. This digital asset is the future. You just have to know, you have to be educated. That's why we believe learn, invest, and succeed, right? You got to educate that correctly and then look at your probabilities and then figure that out.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. Learn, invest, and succeed. There's a lot that goes into it, but it's everything you said sounds wonderful. So I want to thank you very much for your time today. This has been an amazing conversation. Yeah, I have really one last question, and it's how can people find out more information about you, about Blackstone, about Buoyanite? How can they do that?
Yeah, okay. So as we mentioned earlier in our conversation, Blackstone Commodity Group will be changing its name. It's in its process to Bullionite Asset Group, right? But you can still go to blackstonecommodity.com. We'll send you the links. You can put that for your viewers. Blackstonecommodity.com, even after we change the name, it'll forward to the new site as well. So you can go there, you can find out everything we do with the self-directed IRAs, the physical metals, the cryptocurrency, all that. You'll have great videos, a lot of media stuff that I've done. And then bullionite.com is where you get all the education when it comes to trading, the mindset, investing mindset, all that. So these are the two, and we'll send you links. And also I'm sure we'll have a particular link for your viewers as well, so they can get better information and we can go from there, you know?
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome, Jamil. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate that.